So this is part two here, protecting your children. Instead of using the term parents, like to use the term guardians, male or female guardian. It's a specific role that people until the age of, say, 25 would benefit from, and maybe even older ages, especially for women who I think deserve and could use the additional protection of family in order to stay pure for their husband. Now, it's more difficult to protect your children in this day and age because of co-ed schooling, which I think it's better to have single gender schooling with all the teachers being of the same gender. But what you can do to encourage gender separate activities and not talk to the opposite gender whenever possible. Just like, say, in Muslim and other Orthodox cultures who are very conscious of, hey, you know what, people have sexual desires, and instead of acting like they're not there and letting everyone be together, instead we'll use measures to create a respectful space between each. Life should be, especially for the youth, should be about preparing for marriage, with education and discipline, instead of distracting each other with premarital intimacy. It's a distraction from building yourself as a person. Now, for example, women can shave their head, not wear makeup, and only wear sexy clothing once they're married. And it's the same goes with men, to be not showing off their wealth and their strength. And using a purity ring can help to affirm this. For very young people, anyone who's over puberty, will know these desires and should align with the goal of having a great, loving marriage. That should be their goal. And if your children reject your requests, as you try to discipline them and keep them in a good vibe, a loving vibe, then at least the least you can do is video record these instances and take steps to, gradually it gets to a point where, you have to give your energy to, if they're not receiving your moral upliftments and you're trying to help them channel, then it ends up where you've got to use your energy. You've got to be responsible for it and give it to people who actually align with your values. Like maybe other children who deserve your support more than your own children do, as they get older. It's going to be necessary to require children to masturbate and learn to have sex with themselves, because this will allow them to manage their desires, and instead of wanting other people. And furthermore, labeling each other on a first name basis. That way your biological father and son, or if you're a mother and your daughter and son, label each other on a first name basis instead of saying father and son. That way you're encouraging them to develop self-control and self-authority, and so that they don't hate you, how children often say, but rather respect you as a person, not trying to overlord over them. And then guess what? When they see themselves as their own authority, they're going to respect themselves, not pursue unhealthy, unloving behaviors. They're not acting out the submissive role of being somebody's kid. And the reason children do drugs and premarital sex, it's all a retaliation against the parents that they hate for controlling them. Nobody else likes to label somebody as their authority. This is fucking brilliant stuff. It's simple. If you want your guardianship and security, if they want it, then they have to trade off by following your guidelines. The issue is that raising children should be seen as a job. It's not about you wanting to be friends with them. It's teaching them responsible action. This whole wishing your children be your friends, it's cowardly. Bottom line is, people make the mistake of saying that they love their children, but it's not possible to love somebody who is codependent on you. Only if you train them to be self-reliant will they be able to choose once they're adults, whether they want an egalitarian relationship with you, whether they want to be your brother or sister. This connection should be based upon shared values, like I keep on emphasizing, not feeling like you have to be committed to each other because you're biologically similar. Now, when a married couple has children, the highlight of the experience of marriage and being parents is not about like love your children and be their friends, but the highlight is imbuing your shared values from you and your spouse into your children. Now preparing for marriage. So the emotional pleas of not having sex until marriage is because it's bad or you go to hell is in a way unconvincing, because people want a logical approach. Avoiding premarital intimacy will help you focus all your resources and your passion towards your future spouse, somebody to live for. Now, premarital intimacy is unloving because people only seduce each other if they don't care about each other. You know what I mean? Now, if no money is involved, it's still prostitution if you're exchanging body for body, and people do it all the time. And if you really loved and respected a person, you would not want to be intimate with them and close, only until you both agreed to live together, and that you're looking at each other as people first, as who this person is in their soul, what's their life about, and then you see that, well, we're aligned, we should be together, and then you use sex to attach. Once you decide you prefer to wait until marriage, then you can implement some of these tricks to staying on track towards a great marriage, such as wearing a purity ring that indicates your commitment. People ask if you're single. Tell them you're preparing for a strong marriage. Don't tell them you're available or single. So, you can send your spouse a daily email saying, and I covered that already. I covered that somewhere. Okay. You don't want to be hoping that someone's going to like you. You want to make it explicit. This is who this person is. Tell yourself and others that this is who I am, and this is who my spouse is. It's better to be alone than with someone. You're never alone if you listen to yourself and you journal and you do the activities that you enjoy. And if you use what I like is a list of qualifiers and disqualifiers, turn-offs and turn-ons of who your spouse is, so it'll make it easy to navigate through life and life. And say no to anyone who's not your spouse. This is a loving and socially positive way to approach life, because guess what? It shows that you're trustworthy and you're not trying to seduce other people's sisters and their daughters and women that they care about. Instead of trying to seduce random women, want the best for women. Want them to have a loving spouse at some point. Now, in terms of selection, so it starts with, you notice when women are attracted to you in public or social media or a quote unquote dating website, which dating is actually for married couples, ironically, but you get the idea. When you see people, and you there's for some reason there's some attention given, First of all, you obviously you're writing down your core values. You should have them. I'm not going to change or submit to you or sell my soul in order to have sex with you. No, it's important to be selective and honest as possible. This is somebody who you should somebody you should want to live alone with, your whole life, or push around in a wheelchair if needed, and want nobody else at any point. The man should always be the one to be the conversation initiator, because he's ultimately the one responsible for asking her to marry him, So the woman's responsibility and her guardians is to avoid verbal and physical intimacy until marriage. And conveniently, this makes a world where men don't have to worry either. Men aren't being seduced. So the thing is, the man is the only person. I'm saying that if women's guardians and them, they ensure that they're virgins, then it translates to all men being virgins as well, so they can start off with the most truest and unadulterated and sexual discovery for each other. Actually, you should be discovering yourself, both men and women, with toys. You shouldn't be, women shouldn't be waiting for men to be being sexually connected and penetrating themselves with toys. Now, so since the man is the only one who can propose marriage, right? The only leverage the woman has is to not be on a date or be sexual until they're married. Because intimacy is what married couples do to reinforce their marriage. And when people are intimate out of wedlock, it shows that they care more about sexual pleasure and hedonism rather than committing to a person in the vibration of love. See, it's this different frequency. And people either pursue true love or they pursue loveless lust for someone's body or perhaps their money. Now, so once the man receives body language cues from the woman, this is important. That's kind of the first step. The woman kind of hints non-verbally, body language. Then the man can approach the woman, ask, and she asks if she'd like to look at his social media, or maybe offer a business card, and then say, and then he can hint at saying something like, marriage is a core value of mine, or something to that effect. So it's obvious to the woman that, well, this person, what about you? Is marriage important to you? And so that leaves the choice of, it leaves the next choice of this step up to the woman. So she doesn't feel pressured to give him her phone number or go on a date. And people shouldn't be going on dates anyway, because that is unloving. It's an intimate act, and it's about being romantic and seducing, and it only makes sense within the context of marriage. Now, if you meet on social media or a dating website, it's easier because the man and woman can easily compare each other's profiles and interact, and also in a safe way, far from each other. Now, okay, so if she messages you showing interest, then you can insist on email exchanges and perhaps video chat. I think this is the most efficient way to exchange personal information and private information. To really see if you could successfully move through life together. People think that you need to be sexual in order to decide whether you like each other, but in fact, you can discuss this as well. You can show pictures of each other and be candid about the frequency you'd like to have intercourse, etc. To me, it seems unclean to have contact sexually with more than one person. And when people engage in masturbation, have the principles of love and marriage, and not wanting to seduce each other, they don't want any half-hearted premarital acts like boyfriend or girlfriend. And we're not boys and girls. And by the way, I just added a few more items to the protecting your children section. Why would you send your children out into the world alone and label them children or kid, or informal language like sweetheart or honey, or anything, little man? Alright, so I'm gonna go to part 3 here.